Hey. Thanks for having me, Todd. I'm really excited to do a word hack. So I was supposed to present this last month, and then Todd and I both got COVID. So thank you for having me back. I'm so excited to talk to you all about pinball maintenance. It is the thing I do the most at Wonderville. And so after this talk, I'm going to open up the pinball machine, and if y'all want to take a look at it, I also have a lot of previous iterations of things I've worked on. So yeah, this will be a little bit of an interactive show. So yeah, welcome everybody. My presentation is Zen and the Art of Pinball Maintenance. Epilepsy warning, there are a few slides with strobe effect, so just want to throw that out there before we start. Like every good story, this one starts in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Except not at this place, although I do like the name. This starts at the Silver Ball Retro Arcade. Has anyone been here? Yeah, great spot. It's on the boardwalk. And since this is a word hack, I wanted to think about ways that pinball machines communicate with us. And so if you've ever gone to Asbury Park, they have a great collection of machines dating back to the 1950s. And it seems like when pinball first came around, the language of pinball it had a kind of a range, but it's kind of started with sports. And so, yeah, Grand Slam, World Soccer. There's a bank-a-ball, which is kind of stretched off on the side there. And then construction, mysticism, Martians, and then lately, big budget films, big budget TV, and of course, rock and roll. And as I was playing some of the rock and roll pinball machines, I kind of had the idea, this was back in my 20s when I was living at a place called Death by Audio, that there was a band I was living with called A Place to Bury Strangers. And I thought if anyone should have a pinball machine, it was this band whose stage show consisted of strobe lights, lasers, like 5 projectors and fog machines. It was kind of a sensory overload. So to backtrack a little bit, before we talk about A Place to Bury Strangers, I just want to talk briefly about a place called Death by Audio. So this is Oliver Ackerman. He is both the singer of A Place to Bury Strangers and the founder of Death by Audio Guitar Pedals. And from 2004 to 2014, there was a warehouse in Williamsburg where they not only manufactured guitar pedals, but there was also a small all-ages venue there that hosted bands every single night. And there was also a loft space in the back where 13 people lived, and there was a screen printing studio and a practice space and wood shop and all of that kind of thing. And I moved in there in 2009 when I first came to New York and didn't have a job. And one day I decided to build an arcade cabinet and throw it into the venue. And this kind of kicked off a decade-long arcade building kind of snowball effect. It turned into Death by Audio Arcade, which was a collaboration with many game developers around New York. And when Death by Audio closed in 2014, this became somewhat of a traveling roadshow. We were setting up custom arcade cabinets in different spaces around Brooklyn, offices, venues, art spaces, until finally we were able to kickstart and open this place where all of these games live now. So a little bit of backstory on that. So back to A Place to Bury Strangers. So the idea behind this pinball machine was kind of this pie in the sky idea until a pinball machine kind of fell into my lap. My friend Eric had this in his studio. It was a 1959 Gottlieb Mademoiselle machine, and it was pretty beat up when we got it. You could see the theme was women. So, we decided this would be perfect for a retheme. No one's going to miss it. But there was a lot of work that needed to be done. So we gutted it. And it's kind of hard to see this slide, but essentially this was 1959. There was no computers yet. So this entire thing was electromechanical, and there were these gigantic relays. And all the wires were cut anyway, so we took all the relays and we threw them in a dumpster. And we said, we're going to start over from scratch. And the artwork was beautiful, but we decided to start over with a retheme. And one of the original residents of Death by Audio, Joe Jurowitz, had always wanted to paint an arcade cabinet. And we said, do you want to do the playfield of a pinball machine? And so we took everything off and we gave it to him. And yeah, he did this really awesome Death by Audio theme. All those inserts that were kind of circusy numbers, we took iconography from the guitar pedals and laser etched them. So these are all kind of from Death by Audio guitar pedals. And they're like little clear acrylic inserts for the lights to show through. The marquee was done by Preston Spurlock, another artist we knew. And we knew we also had to have spaces for like a video screen and a scoreboard. And so Preston did this awesome design for A Place to Bury Strangers, leaving us the space to put all of the other hardware into it. And then it came to wiring. And remember, we threw away everything that was in this. So we were kind of starting from scratch. These things are magnetic coils. They're called solenoids. But remember, they're from 1959. So we thought it was a good idea to just replace them all off the bat and kind of do the wiring from scratch. And then we had to figure out how to design a circuit to do this. So those of you who are pinball aficionados may be aware of Pinside, which is this forum that I kind of lived on for a year. And they said, oh, if you want to use something like a Teensy or an Arduino, this is a circuit you could use. So made a custom circuit board. These are MOSFETs, which are kind of like high current transistors. And I was like, sure, these will work. And then eventually I realized that they were, the copper traces were just melting because it was too much power. And I kind of jumped them with really beefy wires until I realized this was probably not a long-term solution. So I redesigned the board, and without getting too into the technical weeds, there's a transistor and a relay that work together to have the current version of the board, which I have up here. And instead of making this myself, I sent away for it because it was going to be more reliable that way. And so I have 3 copies of this control board. This controls the flippers and all of the bumpers in the pinball machine. Funny story, actually, a relay short-circuited about 2 weeks ago, and I ordered relays, and they arrived today at 4 o'clock. And I was like, can I get the pinball machine working before this talk? And yes, I did. I got it working. So you can all play it tonight. So there's a lot more going on than just that board. This is what it looked like in 2016. All of these circuit boards were like custom made. And then this is what it looks like today. All these purple boards were sent away for. We learned a lot about things burning out and current. There are 4 microcontrollers, some Arduinos, some custom Arduinos, and they all talk to this dusty Raspberry Pi that's been living in the back for about since 2016, not 16 years. That's too long. And so basically, I'll show you the software in a little bit, but Dustin Long wrote a Python script that basically has the Raspberry Pi talking to all of these different controllers to handle scoring and points and everything like that. One of these controls these. These are 120 volt like wall outlet relays. So the strobe lights, the fog machine, the lasers, everything that plugs into the wall can be controlled with this row of relays. And in the back of the machine, they all just plug into those. Andy Wallace, who's here in the back, helped with the software. So as with any game, there's game design that goes into a pinball machine. And Andy basically took the whole layout of the playfield and put it into a processing sketch and then used a mouse as the ball to kind of like simulate what it would be like for someone playing this. I love this video because it's like, you know, this didn't need to happen, but I'm so glad this happened. So there's some games in the pinball machine. Like if you light up the top 5 bumpers, the strobe lights go off. If you can hit the target in the middle 3 times, the fog machine goes off. The laser goes off every 500 points. So, there's incentive for people to do certain things. And this is kind of what most pinball machines are like. It's like they have an objective and you complete the objective and you get rewarded, though it's usually not getting blasted with fog in the face. This is what it looks like if you plugged a screen into the Raspberry Pi. This is sort of the Raspberry Pi communicating with all of the different things, and you could see like all of these comments turning on relays, turning off relays, connecting to different things, loading music. There's, I think, 6 A Place to Bury Strangers songs that load up when this boots up. So it cycles through those songs. And there's a little media player, totally independent of everything else, that just cycles through music videos for the band. And so the finishing touches, instead of putting the circus bumpers back on, we just laser etched some, EE iconography onto the bumpers. You could see different tubes and transformers and transistors and things. And it launched in 2016, A Place to Bury Strangers Pinball. And we brought it to Le Poisson Rouge for Enorbita Festival. So this is kind of the first time that it was in public at A Place to Bury Strangers concert. Oh, that didn't work. Let's see if we can play it again. So this was, 7 years ago? And so, we launched Wonderville in 2019. There was a couple years that don't count after that. And then, you have a pinball machine that's free to play in a venue that's open every night. And there's problems. So these are some of my favorite photos of things that have gone wrong. You could see that's a solenoid that burned out. This was the problem from 2 weeks ago. And this has happened many times just because something gets short-circuited, something burns out, and it just causes a chain reaction. This is a flipper with a big chunk taken out of the bottom. I'm not really sure why that's happening, but I'm just buying replacement flippers to fix that here and there. And since everything's from 1959, it's all been sort of breaking. So with the help of Steve Folletti, who is really good at modeling 3D parts, we've started manufacturing the plastic parts that go on the playfield, like the bumpers. So this has been really helpful because I don't have to order from some garage in Wisconsin who has parts from 1959. And so, pretty much this is every day I'm at Wonderville, there's probably something going on with the pinball machine, but I love working on it. And there's a large team of people that worked on both the electronics and the software and the art on this, as well as venues that have hosted it. And everyone who writes down pinball issues on the dry erase board, thank you. You help me to know what to fix. So, thank you all for coming and playing pinball. Questions?
Use an existing cabinet and change a lot about it. What are the, in retrospect, what are the trade-offs? What did you get from
don't build it from scratch. I would say, there was another indie pinball machine that was in here when we first opened called Mirror Ball, and he kind of just rethemed a 1970s machine and didn't really touch the electronics. And that might be, if I had to do it again, maybe the route I would go, because a lot of the problems that I'm having are with the custom circuitry. And I think it's just, it takes a lot of iteration to get that right. And so I think maybe a retheme is the way to go, and maybe not a whole gut redesign. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Is it funner when you made it yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you want to work on a project for the rest of your life? I always, if I die, please bury me in the pinball machine. That's where I'm going. Yeah. I went to school for electrical engineering, so I knew about, MOSFETs, transformers, transistors, all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't really do any. I think the reason we went for an old machine, because I didn't want to design the play field. There's physics around where the ball goes. And I was like, I don't trust myself to not make a spot where the ball gets stuck and it can't come out. So I'll just use the play field, and then we'll redesign the game. So that was sort of the thinking behind this. I don't know. I mean, even though I have a lot of electronics background, I still don't know if I would want to do all the wiring from scratch again. Yes?
If you could change any one feature and it wasn't hard and frustrating to do, what would you change about the machine?
Oh my God. I really love the gameplay, and I love everything about it. I think redesigning the circuit board that keeps burning out. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's the thing that gives me pain. Yes, Tom.
We have a question from Photon Pig on the Twitch stream, which is, how do you recommend getting into physical game construction?
Ooh, this is a great question. So the white cabinet that I showed earlier in the presentation was a MAME cabinet, multi-arcade machine emulator. And there's tons of people online that build these kinds of machines, which is basically if I get a computer and a bunch of joysticks and buttons, how do I make it an arcade machine? And that's a great way to start, especially if you kind of don't know what you're doing. There's tons of plans and tons of wiring diagrams. So check out MAME cabinet builds. Yeah, anything else? Cool. Well, thanks, y'all. I'm going to pop the hood on the pinball machine, so during the break, if anybody wants to check it out, come over, and I'll show you around. Thanks, Todd.